Hello everyone, welcome to the next session of SAP Security. In this session we will be discussing about SAP HCM, the introduction about SAP HCM, that is SAP HR. First of all, SAP HR deals with very sensitive data. As a result, SAP HR security is typically more straightened than the security of other SAP modules. Let's say in a lot of non-HR application, security is more generated towards preventing wrong entries or preventing some mistakes in the entries in the system. However, in case of HR, even the display of a private data that might leads to non-compliance based on the law and regulations of a specific country. Some part of this world is very specific about this viewing of private information. Firstly, most of SAP is based on positive authorization, that is prevent the particular authorization from the user buffer. That means once you don't assign a specific thing to a user, then they cannot do the task which they are trying to do. HR is the one area where negative authorization can also be used in addition to existing positive authorization. The negative authorization in this case prevents an user from accessing some application due to the presence of certain authorization in his user buffer. Secondly, HR uses structural authorization to restrict HR access to certain hierarchy within the authorization which is independent to the general authorization assigned to these roles. Next, let us look at what is info type. Info type or information types always integral component of a discussion in SAP HR or SAP HCM. In general, info type, or let's say we call this as info types. In general, info types are structures to store HR related data. For example, address of an employee is stored in info type 006. Or similarly, we have different info types for storing personal data. For example, this is stored in info type 002, bank details 009, basic pay 008, things like this. Some info types are further subdivided into subtypes, as an employees being the address info type. This is an example. Then you need to have a subtype. This address entry can belong to a subtype permanent residence or temporary residence or emergency address, mailing address. There is different kind of addresses you can have. So these are all the subtypes. Info types are very relevant for security standpoint, and SAP provides standard authorization objects which allows user to secure the info types and subtype combination. Like you can secure info type and subtype as together in these combinations. The first thing is, whatever we have discussed is all of an attribute of a person. You store address of a person, salary of a person, bank detail of a person. However, info types can just as well as store attributes of HR objects like positions, jobs, tasks, things like this. Depends on whatever an info type stores in attributes of a person or HR object, we can divide them into info types required depending on whether an info type stores an attribute of a person or let's say HR objects. We can divide them into info types. For example, personal administration PA or personal planning PP is like this. The PP info types are referred as info types for organizational management or personal development. OM, we call this OM, personal development PD, like this. The distinction between PA and PP info type is important for security, and two basic type of input types are secured by different authorization objects, that we will see that in detail how this is been differently handled. Another point to note what we have discussed, the info type is associated with unique 4-digit number. This unique 4-digit identifier might vary from 000 to 999, and it's broken into sub ranges depending on the type of information stored, like what we can see in the presentation. 000 to 009, it's called, this is used for personal administration, which we call as PA, and 100 to 199, this is for personal planning, which we call as PP, and 200 to 299, this is for time management, which we call as PA, personal administration. So you have a different category in PA, is time management. From 400 to 499, this is for recruitment, that also comes into PA. Then 900 to 999, this is customer specific, that means customer can specify or customer can use their own customized info type to store any additional information if it is required, which is not defined in this specific category. This is basically, this information will help us in the coming sessions how we can categorize these info types. So these are all the some of the HR transaction code. OOAC, that is HR authorization switch, this is basically a customizing transaction code. Next one is PA20, this is display HR master data, and PA30, this is maintain HR master data. If you have seen our logistics transaction code, you will see VA01 is create and VA02 is change and VA03 is display. Here is little bit different than the logistics one. PA20 means display data, PA30 means maintain HR data, OOSP is for defining PD profile, personal data profile, OOSB is direct assignment of PD profile to users, we will see that later, that is called structural authorization. Then we have PP01, this maintaining of PD data. Then PPOC, that's create org unit, and PPOS is display organization plan. This T code does not mean this is the only T code which we use in HR. There is quite a lot of transaction code, quite a lot of functionalities, and we will not be able to go through all the transaction code in this course because we are concentrating on security, and these are all the transaction codes somewhat is related to security, and we will be using this, and each other transaction codes also something which is relevant when we go to the later sessions, and you will be understanding this better. So we gave some example of HR transaction codes in order to start with this particular session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session. Bye bye.